Hi, I'm here today with two professors and researchers, Blaise from St. John's in Queens and Rob from Rutgers in Newark. So guys, can you tell me a little bit about what you research?
Well, do you want to start?
Sure. One of my major research projects at St. John's is involved in understanding how mutations in a certain gene called BRCA1, also known as BRCA1, increase a woman's risk of breast cancer. And so we do a model system where we actually use yeast cells, like the yeast you put into baking bread, and we use them as a vehicle to study the effect of mutations on the BRCA1 gene.
It's very interesting. And you?
And so what I do is I'm interested in how genes control the development of an embryo. Is how a fertilized egg goes to a fully formed animal. And we use a model system to do that. We actually use fruit flies. And we study how genes actually regulate cell differentiation events during early development. And what we find is that there's a very interesting pathway that has parallels to pathways that are of importance, medically important, to human beings and to human health.
And what actually interests you into encouraging you to search this field?
Well, I've always been interested in fundamental questions in science and asking questions that basically no one's ever asked before. And this was an area that really excited me. I think it's kind of an interesting, nobody really understands, how do you go from a fertilized egg to an animal, to an embryo? It's such a complicated process that we like to understand. Is there a real mechanism that is fully comprehensible behind it that we can really get our hands on? And this was the reason I became involved in this kind of research.
Yeah, I think in terms of where it came from, I'm not exactly sure in my own personal story. I've always just been curious about stuff. And I see like my baby girl now, she watches Curious George. And he's just into everything and asking questions of why, how. And that's just how it started. I went to college as an undecided major, thinking I was going to major in business, and, go down that path. And I had a professor really excited about chemistry. I mean, maybe it sounds weird, but it wasn't. He loved what he did, and I just got really into it. And I said, wow, I want to do that. And majored in chemistry and got involved in research, asking some questions in that respect, and chemical-based questions. And I just kind of kept asking different questions just because of curiosity. So I think curiosity is what moved me. Just, why is this happening? And the luxury of being able to do that, being able to study and have the time to do that, that was also another factor.
What would you encourage students to look into this field about?
Would I encourage them? Well, I think basically that you have to follow what you think is most interesting and exciting, and try different things. Try different areas of inquiry. If you're interested in a particular area of research or engineering or whatever, try to find some kind of summer employment that's close to that kind of subject. Get a little bit of experience. Sort of get your feet wet. See if you like it. Try it out. Try to get into a laboratory. I remember when I had my first laboratory set up, I had undergraduates coming in. I had students that were in high school coming in, working in summers in the laboratory. They can get a chance to actually see what it's like to work in a laboratory, find out if they like it. As a matter of fact, one of the people who started working in my laboratory when she was still an undergraduate is now a faculty member at Rutgers with me. And I work next to her every day now. It's kind of neat to have one of your students actually now become one of your colleagues.
Yeah, I agree with everything that you just said, and I'll just in addition say, or maybe add on to, follow that instinct you have. There are resources out there, in your school, in your local community. You can volunteer at a hospital if you're interested in medicine, get a first-hand glimpse, volunteer in a research lab, email a professor. No one's ever going to be upset to get an email from a student who's interested in finding out about the field or about the research. It could be that particular professor at the moment is busy. It could happen later, or you can ask another professor. or another person in industry, or look to the resources around you. Maybe a family member works at a company that's doing some kind of research. You might be able to come in and see. Really, I think it starts with you. You have to be the one to want to do it, but I think someone somewhere will help you do it, but you have to be persistent, because a lot of people say no, or I'm busy, or they might want to help and they can't at that time. So I think persistence, I guess, is what I'm adding to Dr. Delato's comments. Is if you're persistent, you will be able to explore these different options, and especially when you're young, because there's so much stuff that you can do when you're younger and get involved with. So I would encourage that. Be very persistent, and no one's ever going to be upset. Oh wow, I got an email from a student who wants to help me in my lab. You might not be able to do it at that time, but no one will ever be upset at you for trying.
Yeah, for example, along those lines, when I went to college, I was a sophomore in college, I wanted to work in a laboratory, and no laboratory would take me. It's like, you're only a sophomore. We're not going to, we want someone a little more advanced. What can you do? So I knocked on every laboratory's door until I found one that said, well, we've got something here. We've got this little project that hasn't been finished up, and I need someone to do it. Would you do it? And I said, I'll do anything. And I actually got 2 papers from that project. I actually got publications. My first publications came out of working, as a sophomore. And it's pretty amazing.
That is.
Yeah.
Is there a lot of hands-on with this field of research or is it more of just on computers and looking into information?
Well, I would say more and more is becoming computers, but there's still a lot of hands-on. And it depends upon the specific subject you're working on. Computers have become much more prevalent today, but it's a mix. It can be what you want it to be, basically.
Yeah, to build upon that prior comment, when I started out in college, undecided, one of my professors offered us a chance to come into the lab, just to see the lab. And I took him up on it. I went up to his lab, and he said, well, if you're interested in helping us out, you're more than welcome. But my role was to change the cages. The rat cages. I had to pick up the rat and change the cages. And I said, I'm sitting there changing lots of cages, and I'm like, is this worth it? But very quickly, his philosophy was, well, let me see if I can trust him in small things, and then I'll trust him in progressively bigger things. And by the end of my sophomore year, I was doing research with a professor who, published in his research in premier science articles, and really that event changed my life. So, he helped me get into graduate school. And if I was unwilling to change the cages, that would have never happened. So it's kind of like sometimes you have to invest in yourself, because the payoff later is bigger than it might look at the moment, I guess is what I'm trying to say there.
Yeah, I agree totally.
So basically you started out small and now you progressed into something so much bigger.
It's unbelievable, where the opportunities go. And that's the thing, I was lucky in a sense that, the way my life has developed, I've always had the luxury of time to study and pursue things, and I made it a priority. And so, sometimes I look and my friends have a house already and their kids are 15 years old, and I have a 2-year-old, and I'm like behind on that in that respect. But in other respects, I feel like I've been able to do things that other people haven't been able to, because life gets complex. So I think it's worth investing now in your futures, because it is yours, and it's something you need to care about. And you can't just sit back and say, well, it'll all work itself out. In some aspects you can, it's one way of coping with things, but you do have to believe in yourself, because you're your best product.
And what made you guys attend the science fair?
Well, for me, I've known Michael Pachel, who's the organizer, since I was, I guess, in elementary school, and we've been friends ever since. And he threatened me, actually. He said, you have to do this. And I said, actually, I like the idea of doing it. The idea was that as a teacher, I know how important it is to be able to communicate with kids and to try to reach people, to show them what there is out there. And I think if people are going to be happy in their lives, if they're going to be happy with their career choices, they're going to be happy with all their choices, they have to go with their instincts and try to do what they think is best for them. And a lot of people just don't know what's out there. They don't know what the opportunities are. They don't know what the questions are. And I think it's great, this kind of this kind of a science fair is a wonderful thing because it actually shows young people what all the possibilities are. You know, what is available for them if they're interested, and what turns them on personally, what makes them excited. And I think it's important to go out there and communicate that.
100% agreement. I think you need to know what's out there. And there's a lot of things out there in the media and you see things every day, but it's important to come to these events where you actually interface with scientists or other people involved in engineering, because you can actually ask the question, what's it like to do this? And the answer is not always, it's so great all the time, right? There's a lot of days where you're like, oh. And then there are days when you see that result and you're like, wow, like what Dr. Delata was saying, I'm the first one to know this. I'm the first one to know this. It's pretty amazing. And so I think in that respect, why I'm here is because I always wanted to be here. It's something like this, and we need more of these kinds of things. Even, if this is on the state level, it would be great to have this all over in all the states. But even on the local level, I call it the giving back. You come to a point in your life where you should give back something because you didn't get to where you are just by yourself. And it's important to keep the giving back part somewhere in your mind. Maybe you can't give back right then, but at some point if you can. And so if I'm giving back and 1 or 2 kids gets excited, I mean, it was great seeing kids look through the microscope, which I wasn't even thinking about bringing because I thought maybe it's boring now because you can see everything on the computer. And they're just running up and looking at it, and I remember being that excited. So it's great, and I'm thankful for being able to be here. So.